The throne room of the alien king was larger than any human cathedral. Tall pillars rose into the darkness, glowing with alien crystals. Guards in silver armor stood like statues, their sharp weapons pointed to the floor. Every alien eye in the chamber turned toward the human who entered. He was only one man, dressed in torn clothes from long travel. His boots carried the dust of deserts, his hands were scarred. Yet he walked straight, without fear, as if he had come not for treasure but for truth. At the end of the hall, on a throne carved from black stone, sat the alien king. His crown shimmered with fire, his robes moved like smoke. Eyes cold and golden, he looked down at the human as though he was nothing more than an insect. But then, with a voice deep and echoing, the king spoke. "You have come far, human, across war and wasteland, across stars you cannot even name. I promise you a reward for surviving my trials, for enduring my tests. Now speak, what do you desire? Gold? Weapons? A place among my champions?" The hall fell silent, waiting for the human's answer. Before him, piles of treasure glittered, mountains of alien gold, weapons glowing with ancient energy and gems that burned with their own light. One step forward and he could claim any of it. The guards whispered to one another, sure that no mortal man could resist. But the human's eyes were not on the treasure. He looked past the gold, past the weapons, to a shadowed corner of the hall. There, chained against the wall, sat a girl. Her hair was long and tangled, her clothes little more than torn rags, her face pale as moonlight. At first, he thought she was dead, but then she lifted her head. Eyes glowed faintly, not human, not alien, but something lost in time. The human felt his chest tighten, his breath catch. For in those eyes he saw pain, years upon years of pain. The alien king followed his gaze. He leaned back in his throne, and a smile touched his lips, though his eyes remained cold. "Ah, you see her, the forgotten one, bound for centuries. She is no treasure, human. She is curse." Laughter rolled from the aliens in the hall, cruel and sharp. But the human did not laugh. He stepped forward, pointing past all the riches, past all the glittering gold. "I want her," he said, his voice steady, his words cutting through the laughter. The hall grew silent again. The air seemed to freeze, the fires dimmed, even the crystals along the walls flickered. No alien in the room believed what they had heard. One of the guards stepped forward, his voice harsh. "Human fool, you turn away from treasure for a broken girl?" But the human stood firm. "I came not for gold, not for power, not for jewels," he said. "My choice is her." The alien king's smile faded. His golden eyes narrowed, and his fingers curled against the throne's arm. "Do you know what you ask?" he said, his voice now like thunder rolling across mountains. "She has been chained here for centuries, forgotten by her people, rejected by all. She is not gift. She is burden. She brings only ruin. And yet, you ask for her." The human did not flinch. "Yes," he answered simply. His eyes did not leave the girl, who stared back at him with disbelief and fear, but also with something else, a flicker of hope. The alien king rose from his throne, his presence filling the chamber like a storm. The guards shifted, their weapons raised slightly, unsure of what would happen next. The king's voice roared, echoing through the endless hall. "You reject treasure, you reject glory, you reject my offer. For a chained ghost of the past. So be it, human, but your choice will cost you everything." The human clenched his fists, but he did not step back. He had faced hunger, storms, monsters of alien worlds. What was one more trial? What was one more fight, if it meant saving her? The girl's chains rattled as if they felt his words. Her eyes widened, her lips trembled, as though she wanted to speak. But before she could, the ground shook beneath them. The throne room trembled, dust fell from the ceiling, and from the shadows came a low, terrible sound. It was not laughter, it was not anger, it was something older, something waking. The alien king's expression darkened. "You have awakened what was meant to sleep forever," he said. "And now, human, You shall face the price of your choice." The human did not turn away. He stood between the king and the girl, his heart steady, his voice quiet but strong. "Then let it come," he said. The chamber filled with whispers, the guards murmuring, the aliens shuffling. For the first time in centuries, the forgotten girl was chosen. And for the first time, the alien king's throne room trembled not with laughter, but with fear. The chains around the girl rattled louder, shaking against the stone as if something ancient fought to break free. The alien king's eyes burned like molten fire as he stepped down from his throne, each movement echoing like thunder through the chamber. The guards closed in, their silver weapons raised, their alien faces twisted with disbelief and anger. No one had ever rejected the king's treasure. No one had ever dared to choose something the king had cursed. "Do you truly defy me, human?" The king's voice roared, shaking the pillars. "I offered you gold, weapons, armies, even a throne by my side. Yet you dare point at her. She is nothing. She is broken. She is forgotten." But the human's eyes stayed locked on the girl. She sat trembling, her head bowed, her chains glowing faintly as if alive. He stepped closer and spoke in a steady voice. "I want her, nothing else." The king's golden hand lifted, a signal, and two guards approached the girl. Their blades sparked as they moved to silence her forever. The hall grew tense, every alien waiting for her end. But before the guards could strike, the human stepped in front of them, his own arms spread wide. "No," he said, voice sharp like steel, "she is mine now." The guards hesitated, unsure, for no human had ever stood against the king's will. The alien king's eyes narrowed. His smile returned, cold and cruel. "Very well, human. If it is ruin you desire, then ruin you shall have." With a wave of his hand, the chains cracked. The sound of breaking metal rang like thunder as the girl collapsed forward. Her body was weak, trembling, her breath shallow. The human caught her in his arms before she could fall to the stone floor. She looked up at him, confusion in her eyes. Her lips parted, her voice soft and broken. Why would you choose me?" The human's gaze was firm, because no one else would. A silence fell over the hall. Even the guards lowered their weapons, their eyes uncertain. The king's expression darkened, though his smile never left. "You do not know what you have done, human. You think you saved her, but you have only unsealed a storm." As the girl's chains fell, the throne room itself trembled. The floor cracked. The walls moaned as though the palace itself feared her freedom. The aliens began whispering, their voices filled with dread. Centuries bound, prophecies spoken. The cursed queen. The girl clutched the human's sleeve, her voice shaking. "I'm not treasure. I am not reward. I am curse. They bound me here because they feared what I could become." But the human's voice was calm, unshaken. "Then let them fear. I will walk with you, not away from you." The alien king slammed his hand against the black stone of his throne. A shockwave spread across the hall, knocking guards to their knees. "Enough, human, enough of this defiance. You think your choice brave, but it is foolish. You have chosen chains instead of crowns, weakness instead of power. Very well, then face the consequence." From the shadows, soldiers marched forward, their armor black as night, their weapons glowing red. The king's private guard, silent executioners, the most feared force in his empire. They surrounded the human and the girl, their circle tightening like a noose. The girl's hands trembled, faint light glowing beneath her skin. She whispered with a broken voice, "Run, before it is too late. They will kill you if you stay." But the human tightened his grip on her arm, helping her stand. "I will not run, not without you." Her eyes widened, her lips parting in disbelief. For centuries, no one had chosen her. No one had even looked at her. But this human had defied a king for her, had risked his life for her. A faint glow shimmered in her eyes, stronger now. For the first time in ages, a flicker of her lost power returned. The alien king saw it, and his fury deepened. You dare awaken in my hall? He roared. You dare defy me before my throne? Guards, cut them down. The circle of soldiers closed. Weapons rose, blades humming with alien energy. The girl staggered, still weak, but the glow in her veins began to pulse. The human stepped forward, his body between her and the soldiers, his fists clenched, his voice unshaken. Come then, he said. I will fight every one of you if I must. The air grew heavy. Every alien in the room felt the shift. This was no longer a test, no longer a reward ceremony. This was the breaking of chains, the start of something the king had tried to bury. The whispers grew into shouts. The prophecy, the cursed one lives, the human chose her. The king raised his hand high, ready to give the order that would drown them in blood. But before he could, the girl's glow flared. Chains of light burst from her skin, not to bind her, but to shield the human. The red energy blades struck against her barrier and shattered like glass. The guards stumbled back in shock. Gasps filled the throne room. The forgotten girl, the chained prisoner, was not helpless. Even weakened, she had enough power to break the king's soldiers. The king's smile was gone now, replaced with rage. You fool! Human, you do not understand. By choosing her, you have doomed yourself, and perhaps your entire race. But the human's gaze was steady, his arm holding her close. If that is the price, then so be it. I chose her, and I will not turn back. The girl's glowing eyes turned toward him, tears sliding down her face. Her whisper was almost lost in the chaos, but he heard it clearly. No one has ever chosen me before. And with that whisper, the walls of the throne room cracked. The ground shook harder, as though the universe itself had just remembered a promise long forgotten. The alien king raised his blade. The human tightened his grip on the girl. And in that moment, every alien in the hall knew the forbidden choice had been made, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The throne room still trembled, cracks spreading across the black stone floor as if the palace itself wanted to escape what was happening. The alien king stood unmoved, his golden eyes fixed on the human and the girl, fury burning like fire in the dark. Around them the guards hesitated, blades in hand, but their hearts shaken, none eager to rush forward again after seeing their weapons shatter against the girl's glowing light. The human held her close, steadying her trembling body. Her breath came weak and shallow, yet her eyes glowed brighter than before, faint symbols burning across her skin as though old memories were waking inside her. Stay with me, the human whispered, his voice low but firm. You are free now. No chain will hold you again. The girl raised her head, her voice fragile like wind. You don't understand, human. I was not chained only for punishment. I was bound because my power is dangerous. Dangerous to this king, dangerous to his empire, dangerous to every star he rules. Her words sent ripples through the crowd, whispers spreading like fire. Some aliens looked fearful, some doubtful, but many stared with awe at the faint light flowing from her. For centuries, she had been only a forgotten shadow in the corner of the hall, and now she stood again, glowing like a ghost of legends. The king's voice cut through the whispers, sharp and cold. She tells the truth. She was not prisoner of injustice. She was prisoner of necessity. She is heir to a bloodline long thought dead, a queen of a dynasty that dared to challenge me. I bound her to erase that past. The human's jaw tightened, his hand gripping her arm more firmly. And you feared her so much that you chained her for centuries, he said, his voice hard. The king's smile was thin, cruel. I do not fear, human I rule. But yes, even rulers must cut weeds before they grow into forests. She was such a weed, and you have watered her with your foolish compassion. The girl's knees weakened, but she did not fall. She stared at the king with eyes burning in defiance. You feared me because you knew the prophecy. You knew one day someone would come, someone who would see me not as curse, but as choice. The word prophecy struck the hall like a stone in still water. The aliens murmured, heads turning, voices rising. The prophecy, the human has chosen, it is beginning again. The king snarled, his patience breaking. Silence! His roar shook the chamber, his crown flaring with light. Yet no silence followed. The whispers only grew louder, echoing in every corner. The human bent closer to the girl, his voice calm though danger pressed in on all sides. What prophecy? What does this mean? She trembled, her breath unsteady, but she spoke, her words carrying weight far older than her body. Long ago, before his empire rose, before his throne was carved, my people ruled these stars. We were not conquerors, we were guardians, and I was their queen, but the king betrayed us. He bound me, so no one would remember. He buried our empire under his lies. Her voice grew stronger, the glow in her eyes brighter. But the seers foretold that a human would come, a mortal who would refuse gold and glory, who would choose compassion instead of greed. And in that choice, he would awaken me. He would remind the galaxy of what was lost. The human's heart pounded, her words heavy with meaning. He had not come seeking prophecy, nor destiny. Yet somehow he had walked straight into it. He glanced at the king, whose fury was barely contained, his golden blade humming with power. You buried the past because you feared it, the human said, his voice firm. The king stepped forward, his towering figure casting shadows across the floor. No, I buried it because the past was weak, and I will bury it again, starting with you. He raised his hand, and the walls split open, revealing a dozen towering creatures, beasts of black armor and burning eyes, chained war. Machines released to kill. The guards stepped back in fear as the beasts roared, shaking the entire chamber. The girl's light flickered, her body still too weak to stand tall. The human tightened his hold on her and whispered, "If this is prophecy, then we will walk it together. I will not leave you." Her eyes widened, her lips parting as if she could not believe him. For centuries, she had been alone. For centuries, no voice had spoken for her. No hand had reached for her. Now this human stood between her and the monsters of the king, unarmed, scarred, but unyielding. The first beast lunged, its claws tearing through the air. The human braced, ready to face death. But before the claws could reach him, light exploded from the girl's body. Not a weak glow, not a flicker, but a storm of blazing energy. The beast was hurled across the chamber, slamming into stone, the impact splitting the wall. The guards gasped, some dropping their weapons. The girl staggered, clutching her chest, but her voice was stronger now. My strength is returning, and with it, the truth they tried to bury. The human looked at her, his heart steady. Then let it return, let them see what they tried to hide. He turned toward the king, his voice cutting through the chaos. You bound her in chains of stone, but I will break them. You ruled with fear, but I will stand with her, and you cannot chain the past forever. The king's fury boiled over, his crown blazing like a dying sun. Then you have chosen war, human, and war you shall have. The beasts roared again. The girl's light flared brighter, and the hall shook as though the stars themselves trembled. In that moment, every alien watching knew prophecy was no longer whisper. It was alive, breathing before their eyes. And the galaxy would never be the same again. The chamber was chaos, the roars of the war beasts shaking the pillars, the glow of the girl's power cutting through the dark, the alien king standing tall, his golden eyes burning with rage. The human tightened his hold on the girl, her body trembling with both weakness and rising strength. He knew they could not win here, not against the king, not against his endless soldiers. They had to escape. The king raised his arm, his voice echoing across the hall. Close the gates, let none leave alive. Heavy iron doors thundered shut, sealing the chamber like a tomb. Guards swarmed, weapons flashing, their alien voices crying for blood. The human's heart pounded, but his mind was clear. He scanned the room, searching for an opening, a path hidden in shadow. Beside him, the girl whispered, her voice faint but steady. The palace has tunnels, secret ways my people built long before he claimed his throne. I remember them. Her glowing eyes turned toward a cracked wall near the pillars, faint carvings etched into the stone. "That way," she said, her hand trembling as she pointed. The human nodded, pulling her close, then turned toward the advancing guards. He had no sword, no shield, but he had will, and will was enough. He grabbed a fallen spear from the ground, its alien edge humming, and stood tall before the rushing soldiers. "Stay behind me," he whispered, though he knew she was already protecting him with her light. The first guard lunged, blade raised high. The human twisted, the spear clashing with sparks. The strike sent pain through his arms, but he held firm. Another guard came from the side. The girl raised her hand. A burst of light sent the attacker crashing into the wall. The chamber filled with the clash of steel and the roar of power, but slowly, step by step, they moved toward the cracked wall. The king's voice thundered again. "You cannot run, human. She is mine. Her fate was sealed centuries ago." The human shouted back, his voice carrying across the chaos. "Not anymore." With a final strike, he drove the spear through the last guard blocking their path. Then he pressed his hand against the carvings in the stone. The girl placed her glowing palm beside his. Symbols flared. The wall shuddered, then cracked open with a deep rumble, revealing a hidden passage lit by faint blue light. They slipped inside, the wall closing behind them just as more soldiers charged, the king's roar shaking the air, but the door sealed tight. The noise of the throne room faded, replaced by silence broken only by the drip of water and the hum of ancient energy. The tunnel stretched long and narrow, its walls carved with markings older than the king's empire. The girl's eyes softened as she touched the stone. "These passages were ours, built by my people, forgotten when he took everything." The humans studied her, the glow on her skin faint but steady, her voice now carrying more strength. "Your people built this," he said, his tone almost reverent. She nodded. "I was their queen once, but to them I'm only a ghost now, a legend buried in chains." He looked at her, steady and firm. "Then let's remind them their queen still lives." Her lips trembled, and for the first time a small smile touched her face, fragile but real. They moved deeper into the tunnels, the air cold, the walls lined with forgotten symbols, some glowing faintly as though awakened by her presence. But peace did not last, for from behind came the sound of pursuit, boots and claws scraping stone. The king's soldiers had found another way in. The girl stumbled, exhaustion pulling at her body, her glow flickering. The human lifted her into his arms without hesitation, his steps quickening, the weight heavy but his will unbroken. Behind them, the tunnel shook with the pounding of soldiers, the echoes of their pursuit filling the darkness. Ahead, faint light glimmered, the promise of an exit, but the path narrowed, turning jagged and steep. The girl's voice trembled. "He will not stop. He will chase us to the ends of the stars." The human's grip tightened, his voice steady. "Then we'll keep running until the stars themselves burn out." As they turned a sharp corner, a beast lunged from the shadows. One of the king's war creatures forced into the tunnel, its massive body scraping stone. The human braced, his spear lifted, but the creature was too fast, its claws slashing down. At the last instant, the girl raised her hand. Light flared, the beast was blasted back, crashing into the walls, its roar shaking the tunnel. She gasped, falling weak again, her power drained for the moment. The human pulled her close, whispering, "Save your strength, I'll carry us through." His arms ached, his breath heavy, but he never slowed, his steps pounding against the stone as he raced toward the light. The sound of soldiers behind grew louder, closer, but he did not look back. He burst out of the tunnel into open air, the night sky of the alien world stretching above, stars burning like fireflies. They stumbled into an ancient courtyard, broken statues scattered, the ruins of a place older than the king's throne. The girl looked around, tears in her glowing eyes. "This was once my temple, where I was crowned, where my people swore loyalty. Now it is rubble." The human lowered her gently onto the stone, kneeling beside her. Then we'll rebuild it, one step at a time. The king's soldiers spilled from the tunnel behind, their voices cold, their blades shining under the alien moon. The girl pushed herself up, her glow flickering stronger once more, her voice calm but filled with steel. Let them come, I will not be bound again. The human stood at her side, spear in hand, his eyes unshaken. The ruined courtyard became their battlefield, the stars their only witness. And as the soldiers advanced, both human and queen stood together, ready to defy a king and his empire. The ruins echoed with the clash of steel and the cries of soldiers. The human stood with the girl at his side, their breaths heavy, their bodies weary, yet neither stepped back. The moon above cast silver light across the broken courtyard. Statues of forgotten kings shattered under the feet of the alien king's soldiers. But in that ruin, something new was awakening. The girl's glow spread wider, symbols along the ancient stone floor flaring as if answering her return. The soldiers hesitated, their steps faltering as the ruins themselves seemed to come alive. The human spear clashed against alien blades, sparks bursting in the night. He fought not for gold, not for glory, but for the girl who had been chained for centuries. Every strike he made echoed like defiance. Every step forward pushed back against the empire of fear. The alien king's voice thundered from the tunnel, though he had not yet stepped into the courtyard. Fools, both of you! Do you think your defiance matters? Do you think you can undo centuries of my rule? You are nothing but insects under my crown. His soldiers tried to roar with his words, but their voices shook, for the glow of the girl's power unsettled them. The girl lifted her trembling hand. Energy pulsed outward in waves, not of destruction, but of memory. Visions filled the night. Images of her people long ago, proud and strong, walking these same halls before they were reduced to dust. Aliens who had once bowed to the king gasped, for some of them saw their own ancestors in the light. A whisper spread through the crowd, soft at first, then stronger. The prophecy, she lives, the queen returns. The king's fury cracked like lightning, his crown blazing. Silence. I am your ruler. She is nothing but a ghost, a curse dressed in rags. But his words no longer fell heavy. Doubt had already begun to spread among his own people. The human stepped forward, his voice carrying against the storm. You call her curse, but I see only hope. You call her burden, but I see strength. You chained her because you feared her, and now your fear is breaking. The girl turned her gaze on him, her eyes glowing brighter. The storm above the ruins raged like the sky itself had chosen a side. Lightning cracked across the heavens. The broken statues shone with the glow of the girl's power. The courtyard shook with the clash of rebels and soldiers. But all eyes turned when the alien king stepped forward, his golden blade burning like a sun, his crown flaring brighter than fire, his very presence pressing down like a mountain upon the battlefield. The human gripped his spear tighter, his body aching, his arms scarred from battle, yet his eyes stayed steady, his stance firm. Beside him the girl stood, her glow brighter than ever, her chains gone, her power flowing through the ground itself, symbols burning along the stones beneath their feet. The rebels cried louder, voices uniting, for the queen, for the throne, for freedom. The king raised his blade, his voice echoing like thunder. You think prophecy makes you strong. You think whispers of the past can defeat me. I am empire. I am eternity. No storm, no rebel, no human can break me. The soldiers roared with him, but their steps faltered, for already they had seen their weapons break against her light. Already they had seen fear in their king's eyes. The human stepped forward, his spear lifted, his voice calm yet fierce. You are not eternity. You are only fear dressed in gold, and fear can be broken. The words struck like arrows, simple yet unshaken. The girl's eyes shone brighter, her lips parting in awe, for his voice carried more than defiance. It carried truth. The king lunged, his blade a flash of golden fire. The human raised his spear. The clash shook the courtyard, sparks bursting, shock waves ripping through stone. The rebels stumbled, the soldiers staggered, even the ruins groaned under the weight of their battle. The king's strength was overwhelming, each strike heavier than mountains, yet the human met him, step by step, refusing to fall, refusing to bow. The girl raised her hands, light flowing into him, her energy weaving around his spear. Symbols burned across the weapon, glowing with human will and alien power united. The king snarled, his strikes slowing as the spear began to shine brighter than his blade. "You cannot wield her power. You are mortal. You are weak," he roared. But the human's voice cut through the roar. "I am mortal, and that is my strength." The king staggered, for the first time pushed back. His golden blade struck against the glowing spear and cracked, a sound like breaking thunder filling the air. Gasps spread across the battlefield. Soldiers froze. Rebels cried out with hope. The girl's glow flared stronger, her voice clear. "He is no longer alone. I stand with him, and together we are more than you can chain." The king's fury shook the sky, his crown blazing like a dying star. "You are nothing. You are mine. You are always mine," he shouted at her. But she raised her head, her voice steady. "No, I was never yours. I was always theirs," she said, motioning to the rebels, to the human, to the galaxy beyond. The ground split, pillars of light rising from beneath the ruins, ancient technology awakening, the old empire breathing again. The soldiers fell back in terror, their loyalty breaking. The rebels surged forward with renewed strength. The king roared and swung his broken blade, striking down rebel after rebel. But his fury could not silence the storm. For the first time in centuries, he was not feared, he was hunted. The human pressed forward, his glowing spear striking again and again, sparks clashing with the king's faltering blade. Each strike was heavy, each step filled with fire, yet he did not stop. The girl poured her strength into him, their bond glowing brighter, power flowing between them like one heart beating in two bodies. The king fell back toward the steps of the ruined temple, his golden blade cracked, his crown dimming, his voice still full of venom but no longer unshaken. "You are fools, both of you. You cannot end me. I am the crown. I am the throne. Even if I fall, my shadow will rule." But the girl stepped forward, her voice ringing clear. "No, your shadow ends tonight." The human lifted his spear, its glow reaching to the sky. The storm above seemed to answer, lightning flashing brighter, thunder echoing across the stars. The king roared and charged one final time, his fury burning, his power desperate. The human met him, their weapons clashing in a storm of light and fire. For a long breath the world held still, rebels frozen, soldiers silent, even the ruins waiting. Then, with a blinding flash, the golden blade shattered, shards flying like falling stars. The king staggered, his crown cracking, his roar broken. The human stood firm, his spear unbroken, glowing with the fire of choice. The girl's eyes filled with tears of light, her voice soft but clear. "It is almost over. One more step and truth will be free." The human nodded, his grip tightening, his body trembling. With exhaustion, but his spirit unshaken. The final battle had begun, and there would be no turning back. The courtyard blazed with light and thunder. The human stood with his glowing spear. The alien king staggered, his golden blade broken, his crown cracked. Yet even wounded, the king's voice roared across the ruins. "I will not fall to you. I will not fall to a mortal." The human's chest heaved. Every muscle in his body screamed with exhaustion. But his grip did not loosen. His eyes stayed fixed on the king, steady as stone. Beside him the girl rose, her glow now radiant, her chains gone forever, her presence like a living star. "You already have fallen," she said, her voice clear and ringing through the battlefield. "For the moment he chose me over your treasure, your reign began to crumble." The rebels cried out, their voices rising like a storm, "For the queen, for freedom." The soldiers who once served the king faltered. Many dropped their weapons. Some even turned against their masters, the tide of the battlefield shifting like a wave. The king roared and lunged again, fury burning in his golden eyes. But his strikes were wild now, desperate, his power cracking like a dying flame. The human met him with a spear of light, every clash sparking fire across the sky. The girl's power flowed through him, her strength and his will joined as one, and with every strike the king was pushed back, step by step, toward the shattered temple. The ground shook as the old ruins awakened, pillars of light rising around them. Ancient machines humming with forgotten energy, the air filled with the voices of the past. The girl's eyes burned with tears of light. This place remembers me. It remembers us. It remembers what he tried to erase. The human tightened his grip, his voice sharp. Then let it remember victory. With a final roar, the king raised his broken blade high, swinging with all his might, but the human lifted the spear, glowing brighter than lightning. The weapons clashed one last time, a storm of fire and light bursting outward, the sound like 1,000 stars breaking. The king's blade shattered completely, shards scattering across the courtyard. His crown split and fell from his head, crashing into the dust. He stumbled back, eyes wide, fury turning to fear, his voice broken. I am the throne. I am eternity. I cannot end. But the girl stepped forward, her glow wrapping around the human like armor, her voice steady. No, you are not eternity. You are only tyranny, and tyranny always ends. The human thrust the spear forward, light piercing the king's chest. The roar of the alien king echoed into the night, shaking the ruins, but then it faded, his form collapsing like shadow under the dawn. When the dust settled, nothing remained but silence, the crown of fire gone, the empire's heart broken. The rebels dropped to their knees, voices crying out in triumph. The king is fallen, the queen has returned. The soldiers who once served the king bowed low, many weeping, for they knew the age of fear had ended. The girl turned to the human, her glow softening, her eyes filled with gratitude and wonder. You chose me when no one else would. You carried me when I could not stand. You fought for me when I could not fight. And because of you, I am free. He shook his head, voice steady though his body trembled. No, we are free together. She reached out and placed her hand over his, the spear fading into light, vanishing as the battle ended. The ruins glowed with quiet fire, the prophecy fulfilled, the storm at last calm. The rebels rose, their voices joined as one. Long live the queen, long live the protector. The human blinked, startled. Protector? She smiled softly, her tears shining like stars. Yes, protector, for in every tale of queens there is one who stands beside them, and you are mine. The stars above shone brighter, as though the galaxy itself had heard her words. The human lifted his head, looking at the endless sky, knowing that treasure meant nothing, gold meant nothing, power meant nothing. He had chosen compassion, he had chosen her, and in that choice he had changed everything. The girl's voice whispered softly, but every rebel, every soldier, every star seemed to hear. In a galaxy of kings and crowns, only one human chose the forgotten girl. And because of that choice, the fate of the stars has changed forever. The ruins glowed one last time. The storm broke, and a new dawn rose over the world. The age of fear was gone. The age of hope had begun.